Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
You don't need it.
Yes, I do.
You got it.
I'm just glad it's today.
Yeah.
That's normal life these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks.
That's, yep.
3 hours and then we can start.
We've got time.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We're going to turn it right over to our Finance Director, Bill Sama, who's going to lead us through a presentation on the 2023 budget. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Good afternoon, Bill.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, Council. The years go by really fast, and here we are again. It's September. We're here to talk about 2023 and the proposed budget. I will tell all of you, I'm really glad it's September 6th. We have been plugging away at this for months, and it just feels good to get to this point and have something to present to you for next year. Now I'm going to find my page down. Do I just arrow in? I sure do. Okay, the timeline for the budget process. This is just a little bit of review, and for you in the audience, kind of what we go through to get to tonight and where we're going by the end of the year. But we start in May looking at the budget process, and department heads start working on their budgets, submitting that into our department. And July, we really dig into it with the Tax Levy Committee then. And this year, the Tax Levy Committee is the Mayor, Ben Shire, Andrew Bremseth, our Administrator, and Councilmember Fish was on the committee this year. It's always the Mayor and City Administrator, and then we rotate a member of the City Council each year, sits on that Tax Levy Committee. We're here tonight to go through the proposed budget and the proposed levy. Not asking for any action tonight at the council meeting. We'll come back on September 19th and ask you to approve a proposed levy in particular and a proposed budget, because by September 30th, we have to have that to Otter Tail County. So that's the deadline in state statute that we bring a tax levy to the county auditor. Then they get that on the tax statements that go out in later November. So we will continue to work on this budget between now and December as well. And we can come back to City Council and have other work sessions in that time if you were to choose that as well. And then we plan to come back in December on the first meeting with the budget hearing where we hold it. It's a public meeting after 6 p.m. We allow the public to speak at that if they have comments, and then ask you to approve a final budget that we get to Otter Tail County then by the end of December. Then we're off and running for 2023. So overall, the assumptions in the budget, we've had settled contracts. So for 2023 wages, 2.9% increase, and 2024 we have a settled contract at 2.8%. So those are fixed costs that we already know because we had settled that 3-year contract. The 2022 increase, Andrew, was 2.8. Is that correct? I think that's where we were at for this.
No, it was 3.2.
3.1 or 3.2, right in there. So there's your 2 and 3. Health insurance, 6.58 we received from Lakes Country Service Co-op. Again, they changed to Medica. They went out for proposals last year, and that's the provider, but our health insurance increase is 6.58. Electric, we're estimating 7%. The city utilities, that's where we charge our own departments for water and sewer usage and garbage, 4%. Natural gas, 110%. What we, as you know at home and what you see throughout very much larger natural gas bills, we doubled that and added 10%. That's what we did for the 2023 budget, because that's what we're seeing right now, that in half the year, we'd already spent the entire natural gas budget for 2022. Liability insurance, 7%, property at 6%, auto at 7%, and workers' comp at 13%. And we work with the League of Minnesota Cities to arrive at those estimates. Workers' comp is a bit high, but throughout the state, we're seeing increased costs of PTSD claims that the league is dealing with. So that's why some of those are a bit higher. So the overall budget, we have a proposed revenue budget of $52,122,181. Expenditures of $51,314,518. That's all funds of the city. We have 80 to 90 funds within the city. They're each run like individual businesses. This is the accumulation of all that. So it's from your general fund, special revenue funds, debt service, all the capital projects, as well as the enterprise funds and equipment fund. So the proposed tax levy before you tonight would be $7,650,000. That would be an increase of $591,500 or 8.38%. That's the change from the current year levy of 2022. And when I said we can still work on this between now and December, that is the tax levies committee's goal, because they would like to see this lower, but this is where we're at as of tonight, where we arrived at with, and we'll show you a little bit about our fixed costs too, where things are at. What we set in September, we can always come down by December, but we cannot go above what we do here. Some cities around the state you will see would set this even much higher, and they really crank in and kind of do the bulk of their work on that between now and December. Typically, the tax levy committee gets the bulk of the work done by the time we come in September to know where we're sitting. We have certainly changed it between September and December, though. Brent?
I got one question to go back with the budget. The natural gas, now is that 110% from last year? Because last winter, did we plan for that? That was already doubled the previous year.
So we under budgeted in 2022, basically.
Okay,
Yeah, didn't put nearly enough in. So the first half of 2022, we basically spent our natural gas budgets. So for next year, I'm saying we're taking a conservative approach that the prices aren't going to come down. I hope they do. I hope we're wrong. But so I took what the 2022 budget is, doubled that, and added another 10% for next
well,
year.
the reason being is everything that I've been hearing, I mean, in the news and everything else, is that we're looking at dramatically higher than what we paid last year.
That we played last year in
Last winter.
2021.
Yeah,
And yes, that would be true, and that's what we're putting in here is dramatically higher than
Okay.
than
That's
that.
off 2022 current, plus doubling.
well, I just figured if they were going off what they budgeted for, not
But
what
I'm
it was
basing it-
actually costing us.
And I'm getting tongue-tied now. I do look at what we're actually spending.
Okay.
So we don't budget from budget. We
Okay,
take
so
what
you're
we're
gonna budget
spending
what we
and try to
actually- okay.
estimate from that.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, because if you had a budget you're not spending, and if, let's say we had way over budgeted for natural gas, and that was the case, I would actually want to bring that down then to more mirror what we're actually
Okay.
doing. It's a great question, though. And we do that throughout the city. We try to look at what are we actually experiencing and spending. So the tax capacity rate now, this you'll see has actually the opposite effect on here. We currently, our rate between the city and the port combined is 59.026. It is estimated to go down to 53.982, or that's an 8.55% decrease in the tax rate. So if your property value did not change, that would say your property taxes would actually go down. Now, of course, we know values aren't going down, they're going up. So we're not here, and even in December, we won't talk on individual parcels, but that's something, can be looked into with the county auditor. Because this tax capacity rate, it's what it is, it's, the rate of, you have your total tax capacity and what we're levying, you take what we levy divided by the tax capacity that you're spreading that over, that tax capacity went way up. So we've got values going up. That's why the rate goes down. So you really are going to have to look at it individually, but that shows a decreasing tax rate. The thing that helps us in that is when we have new construction, new homes going up, business remodelings, expansions, that is new growth that's in that number as well that helps offset increases as well. So all that's in there, as well as decreases in values if, like, the Hoot Lake plant now has been demolished and we start seeing that phased out, that should be in that number as well.
Do you have an idea of what the breakdown of that increase is between increased existing and new?
I don't have that yet.
Sure, I know these are all
Yep.
very new numbers.
I just got these numbers today,
Today,
so
I'm
very
not sure how they
fresh.
came. Yep, got
Yep.
it. No problem.
They've been in the presentation for maybe a couple hours, but I was so glad to be able to have them today because as I built it before I left on Friday, that was just highlighted with to be determined. So we have better information today, but we'll try to pull that apart a little more as we come back.
Thanks, Bill.
So the proposed budget then broke down by fund types. General fund, that is our general operating fund of the city. That's where we do the bulk of the business you think of as a city. Our police department, fire department, streets, park and rec, all of us, city administration are in there, the city council's in there, economic development. All of that flows in our general fund. Special revenue funds are if you have specific revenue sources dedicated for a specific operation. Public library is one of our largest special revenue funds. So we dedicate a property tax levy and intergovernmental aids for that as well. The regional library aid goes into the library. That's what makes that special revenue. Port Authority is within that number as well. Among all our tax abatement districts, our TIF districts, our loan programs, that's all in special revenue. Debt service is where we pay our bond payments. So you issue debt, that goes into a capital project fund to build something, and then when you make payments over, say, 15 years, that comes out of a debt service fund. Capital projects is where we build projects, fix streets, do those kind of things, buildings. That's what falls under there. Enterprise is your liquor store, refuse fund, sewer, water, and stormwater funds. Internal service is a fund of the city that just serves internal customers. So we own all the equipment there and rent it out to the other departments. So those are the individual revenue and expenditures for those funds. Just a pie chart showing of how the revenue comes in citywide. You can see charges and sales is the largest piece of the pie. Again, all our enterprise funds are in there, the utilities that are running, the liquor store sales are in that number. Property taxes at 15% of the entire city budget. So you can, just showing you what that funds. Intergovernmental, our local government aid is in that number. A significant piece of funding for the city, as well as in the capital project funds, doing streets and whatnot. We have state, federal funds that come in for that. For the airport, federal funding, that flows into that pie, piece of the pie as well. Expenditures just divvies up for you where the money is going. You can see starting up at the 1 o'clock kind of spot there, wages, benefits, health insurance, and then our liquor store inventory, services, over to capital outlay being a large one. That again can fluctuate depending on the projects each year. Here's the breakdown of that proposed levy, just showing that increase and the change of that we had talked about on one of the first slides. So the 591,500. I wanted to point out a little separately. So within this levy, there, of that levy of 7,650,000, 113,000 is for tax abatement levies. Those are specific projects that we levy dollars for economic development purposes, and they're based on those individual properties. So we're kind of capturing that value for a number of years. So when you see a levy go on for that, it's really the increase in that value of that particular parcel that offsets that. So an existing taxpayer doesn't feel that burden right at that time. So you may see an increase in the levy, but it should not be affecting your tax bill at that time. The goal being that when you're done with that district, be a TIF district or a tax abatement, in this case, you have that new value on that everyone is sharing.
Just a question on that, with property valuations going up across the board, and the basis for the TIF is based upon collection on that new valuation going on. Have they seen, or is because they're brand new, it's not I'm just wondering, is the time of collection going to be shorter, or is it different for new construction?
Well, if their value is going up, their tax abatement should get done sooner, because typically these abatements have, a maximum of this much. A few of them are structured differently, but yeah, you could pay them down sooner and they would be on the full tax roll sooner then with the higher value.
And I just didn't know, is their valuations that much higher than what was proposed because they were so new, or is it? Which
I'd
would
have to
be
look.
an earlier collection, I guess. Would just curious, not.
Some of those that are a little bit older on here, I think probably the current values would be higher than what was projected, because we did see larger jumps.
Right.
So the cost drivers for the cities, the tax levy committee wanted to kind of get our arms around what are some of our fixed costs. And I say levy supported funds here. Certainly, water, sewer, storm, all of that has more cost drivers as well. But I wanted to focus in on the levy here tonight. So when we look at that 2.9% wage contract we have with the unions, some changes that we have seen, with positions and the related benefits to that, that's $256,000. Health insurance is $90,000, workers' comp $97,000, utilities $115,000. Communications manager, we are adding a new position. That's the communications manager that you as a city council chose to add. I'm allocating that over several funds because that person is going to, work in communications for the liquor store, all the utility funds, the library, you name it. We're allocating that out. So the impact to the property tax levy is $33,000. Equipment rental, we did a 3% inflationary increase to the rental between departments. The way inflation is going up, that might actually be a low number, but we didn't feel we could push that much more than 3 on that one, so that's $40,000. Those tax abatement programs we just talked about, that $30,500 is basically related to the housing rebate program kind of ramping up and getting on board. So total fixed cost of $661,500, keeping in mind our levy impact was a $591,500. We go back.
Yeah.
$591,500. So those fixed costs are even a bit more than what we're increasing the levy. We'll talk about it elsewhere, but we did combine a position. We, in essence, were able to eliminate a position within the city that saved us about $119,000. So that's how, we back some of that down as well. Other costs that are in here that are not fixed costs, but the compensation study that we went through, I know it was brought before you just recently in the last few meetings. Looking at phasing that in probably over a 3-year process, and the amount impacting these levy-supported funds would be about $109,000 is what was included. Street overlays and seal coat, we added 10% to those budgets, or adding about $41,000. This slide just depicts the process of how the taxation system works, where you have the Otter Tail County assessor determining the market values. You apply the class rates that are determined by the state of Minnesota to that. We establish a levy here. You set a flat dollar amount of the levy, and you tell Otter Tail County, go and collect that. They spread that over those values, so over that tax capacity. And then you multiply that, your individual tax capacity on your parcel, times the tax rate, you get the tax bill. This just shows the trend line for the levies and the rate. You can see that rate jumps around a bit, and that's of course when the values change and we get new value added. But you can see that increase in our levy that we're proposing here. This just shows the impacts of that to a $200,000 home, a $500,000 business, showing how those would change. And then the trends below for all taxing jurisdictions. And of course, for 2023, I just got our rate today estimated. I don't have for the school or the county or the HRA. But by December, we'll have that graph filled out. We talked about taxes and state aid, about how, that's how governmental funds are funded. That's how, Funds of the city, your general fund, your libraries, port authorities, that's how they're funded, by property taxes and local government aid. And then on the other various projects as well. This is just a chart showing our local government aid over the year. Just a very slight increase in LGA this year. So when you see inflationary increases through the city and one of your big funding sources doesn't increase much, it falls more to the levy. So just showing you the history of LGA. General government, we talked about the communications manager, about that departmental combination where we were able to save about $119,000. We are using some fund balance or projecting that for the Bigwood Center as we're trying to get that back up and running in full force. We're not there yet. IT department, we have the phone system updates and the main computer system updates, which we do that main system every 3 to 4 years. Woodland Heights neighborhood, the final annexation payment is made in 2022, and the final phase-in of their tax rate is 2023. The 10% to streets we talked about, and we continue to budget capital outlay for our governmental buildings so that we're maintaining those appropriately as well. Public safety, we have a police department budget, certainly one of our largest departments of the city, at $4.4 million. You can see we have 24 officers, 5 office staff, 22 squads and other vehicles. Fire department at $895,000, 3 full-timers, a volunteer department of 36 people. And you can see our various pieces of equipment there. So lots for us to be taking care of and making sure that we're keeping it there for the future as well. Streets and highways, said the 10% we're putting in, that's the annual maintenance within the general fund. We also have the street projects in the capital project fund that we'll talk about, but the 10% goes to the general fund for the maintenance, bringing that to just about $453,000 for overlays and seal coats. Street lighting, the tax levy committee was talking about the phase 3. That's not in here at this point, so we may have to wait 1 more year before we get to the phase 3. Parks and Recreation, we talked with Pam over at Parks and Rec. Nearly 7,000 program participants in our Park and Rec program. So serving a lot of people. We have 29 parks that cover 551 acres. The Park and Rec budget and forestry is about $2 million. And as you're well aware of, the successful phase 1 downtown redevelopment has been completed. Economic development, maintaining the funding for Greater Fergus Falls at $50,000. We talked about the tax increment and tax abatement districts. The tax abatement levy for the housing rebate program at $54,000, and we have 33 homes that are receiving that rebate right now. And that's really just starting. At the end of 22, we'll be making our first payments on that. Again, that's a rebate of up to $5,000 or 5 years, whichever comes first. It's going to max out at $5,000. Port Authority, they're holding their levy stable at $60,000 for the year. They continue with the state of Minnesota. They collect rent to operate the CBHH facility, the Community Behavioral Health Hospital. And the same for the Lakes Country Service Co-op Level 4 Education Facility. Port Authority leases those 2 facilities out, fully funded by those organizations. The Port Authority acted as a conduit, basically, to make those projects happen and own those buildings. And of course, Port is always working on looking to explore, what else we can do in our industrial parks. So the Port Authority had agreed last year to take care of the payment number 1 for the dairy demo loan and the revolving loan fund. They have now agreed to pay payment number 2 for those. So it will be depleting the port's funds a bit, maybe getting down to a little over $100,000 in cash for the general operations of the port. The city is always the backdrop to the port as well. So we're managing that. The goal, of course, to get that property developed and get property sold, hopefully get those loans paid off. So we're trying to minimize that levy and see what we can get going with that RFP and redevelopment. Public library, Operating budget of 990,000. You can see mainly property tax funded for the library. And then we have the data here from them as well. That's the 2021 data. You just saw this in the report just gave a couple weeks ago probably. So we have a great library, lots of participants serving the community very well. The Bigwood Event Center. Just as a review, that was constructed back in 2000, opened in 2001. We operated it with the hotel operators for 20 years. That contract ended at about the same time COVID hit. So we had to close that facility. We have been in the process of getting that reopened. We are using it. Technology isn't completed yet, but we're nearing completion. I'm hoping this fall that is complete. We will have a state-of-the-art facility with technology. We are working almost daily on figuring out how are we going to manage the facility versus in-house versus working with outside parties. We're working on it. We will definitely be coming back to the council with more information and to discuss that with you. Here's the capital improvement budget. The various streets, Junius Avenue, Union Avenue, Stanton, Broadway, Summit, Linden, Laurel. For street projects, again, this is in addition to what's happening with the general maintenance that goes on with streets. A lot of state and federal funding in here. Sidewalk bike paths, we have our annual sidewalk program of $30,000. That's gone on for many, many years. The trail segment through the former dairy, we have $400,000 in here. All of these are just kind of in for planning purposes. You know they're going to come back to you different when you go through the bid process or whatnot, but been working with engineering on estimating these. And even, that central trail segment, it's going to be dependent on funding. If we were to receive something, that could likely get pushed out another year. But RTC preservation project, we do have 1.7 million left of state funding that we need to, if we're going to do a project that needs to be done by the end of June next year of 2023. So we have that in the budget. The Riverfront Phase 2 project in here at 5.2, we did just receive bids last week, so that'll be coming back before the council at a future meeting. Parking lots, see if we can do something on the north side, north of Lincoln, and some stormwater work out at the golf course is being anticipated. The ending charts here are just of our enterprise funds. And I will say, we're going to come back this fall like we usually do, comb through those enterprise funds, rate studies for you. Andrew.
Can you talk about Rich Wenzel's proposed
Oh,
road and trail?
Thank you.
I was supposed to remind
You were supposed to remind me because once I get rolling, I forget. At the last council meeting, we had a resident over by Underwood talk to you about that new, putting in a new road out on the east side of town off of 210 and talking about adding that to the capital improvement program. We have not added that to any capital improvement program yet. It's certainly not in this budget for 2023. It is, what I see is it was just a concept brought up. We could put it in our software of capital improvements. You could put it any year out there. We just bring the 5-year section snapshot of that with each budget before you. We could put it out as a reminder way out here somewhere. I know Brian is going to kind of evaluate what would that process look like to even contemplate this project. Not spending any money on it at this time, but just what would a corridor study look like? What kind of, so not even spending a lot of time on it yet as it's just a concept, but wanted to clarify it's not in the budget here. Did I miss anything on that? Okay.
I would add to that I don't think you need to spend a lot of time either. I mean, this is a road that's not really in the city. It's going out the city. And we have sufficient roads in Fergus that need attention. So Brian should not be spending, zero time on this. I mean, it's not going to happen for X, years. I'll probably be dead and gone by the time it comes around. So, we have enough roads in Fergus to fix.
Agreed. Yep.
So
if anything, right now we'll put it out.
you can put it
Not
as a
even a
line
number
item.
with it,
or-
but just a line item
Yeah.
out there so that, oh yeah, don't forget about this. And if, if there is a federal earmark somewhere that you could put, you never know. But we won't
Yeah.
invest resources in that right now.
Inmarker Road in Fergus.
Yeah, we've got lots of other roads to work on.
We don't need people bleeding out to Underwood and Battle Lake any more than they do. We want them spending money in town.
There you go. The last charts are of the enterprise funds, and as I was saying, we'll come back with a full study of those to you throughout the fall. But certainly, the liquor store fund has been very profitable for us. We take a lot of money out of that operation. Some of it just directly, the bulk of it, to the general fund to decrease property taxes. I think this year we have in the budget $705,000 to be pulled out of the liquor store for 2023 to offset property taxes. Some of that designated for like their IT needs, things that, are their costs of business, and then a $500,000 basically just property tax reduction payments, so. Refuse fund, continuing with operating income. Again, we'll come back, study this in detail for you. Sewer fund, the same. Water fund, the same. Stormwater, the same. Again, I'm not going to, the charts are here for you. We'll get into them more in the fall. Equipment fund, likewise. Next steps. So this is your last slide. Thanks for hanging in there with me, but we're here tonight. And we'll come back on the 19th. We do need action on a proposed levy before the end of the month, so we can get that to the county. We can continue to work on this budget, try to see if we can get these levy numbers down even more by the December meeting. Said we'll come back with a utility rate review. December 5th, we'll hold that public meeting to discuss the budget. It needs to be at 6 p.m. or later. The public certainly can have comments and speak at that time. And then we'll ask you as a city council for action on that budget, again, to get that in place for next year. That is the presentation.
Thanks, Bill.
So if you have any questions, otherwise you're certainly welcome to come in and see me anytime. Tax levy committee as well.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. Tax levy committee, council members, you have ideas about where we can make cuts, bring it to us. We're going to continue this right up to the time that we have to approve it as a final budget, so.
Right.
Anything to add, Andrew?
So again,
Thank you, Bill.
certainly no action here. Clara, did you?
Can I just ask a quick, does the CIP get released with the budget at the same time, and can people comment on that at the December 5th?
Certainly. Thank you for bringing that up. So the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program, it is a planning document where we really try to pare it down to try to tie it into the budget. It's not a perfect document. Just in the last month, Brian, our city engineer, and I kind of went through it and tried to dial it in from the projects that you as a council have been talking about. I would really like in future years to even expand that more, but we're kind of running it parallel with the budget, so if people want to comment, absolutely can do that, certainly at that December meeting, or even before if they choose. Yeah, maybe even something, they could even send comments through you as well between then, up until then, certainly.
Thanks.
Maybe just make a comment. I was on the tax levy last year, I think it was, and it's kind of a daunting task. So thank you to the tax levy and you guys and your staff for putting this together. It's a lot of work that goes in it. So thanks to Bill and Sandy and the tax levy committee.
Not so much to Andrew, but to Bill and Sandy. No, thanks
Thank
to
you to
everyone.
all of you.
Thanks, Sam. So anyway, if you have
A lot of
questions,
work
bring it
goes.
to the tax levy committee, bring it to Bill or Sandy, and we'll continue the process, continue to work on it. And we'll get back together at 5:30.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Hey, Guy and Claire, do you guys have anything?
There's a lot of meetings. Nope.
Yeah.